I think the book of the Bible that's used less than any other is the book of Song of Songs. Depending on what Bible translation you have, it may say Song of Solomon rather than Song of Songs. It's a short book in the Old Testament, sort of in the middle of the Old Testament, sits between Ecclesiastes and Isaiah, and it's usually completely ignored for the simple reason that people do not know what to do with it. Now, it is one of the two books of the Bible that does not mention God or anything about religion, the other book being the Old Testament book of Esther. Now, this book, the Song of Songs, does not seem in any way to be a religious writing, and for that reason it puzzles people as to why it's in the Bible in the first place. And to put it bluntly, the subject of the Song of Songs is sexual desire. Most of the book consists of the voices of a young man and a young woman. They are not married, and from the text it is apparent they are not even engaged. In fact, from the text it is apparent that they are very young and they are what we would call adolescents. Their families apparently do not know of their attraction for each other. They have a tremendous sexual attraction for each other, and they express it in explicit terms. The majority of the book consists of this boy and girl expressing their sexual longing for each other. In the world we live in today, it's very unusual for us to think about adolescence and sex. Of course, we do know that adolescents have sex. You just witnessed the number of 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds that get pregnant. But the way our society is set up, most people marry at a much older age. It's not just the way things work today to think of 14 and 15-year-olds having sexual desire and all. And that's the reason the Song of Songs is something people don't really know what they should do with. It's a book in the Bible about sexual longing between two adolescents. And that seems so strange. Now, before we go any further, I want us to stop and think about something. We have many different connotations of the word love. We might say, I love ice cream. I love my cat. I love to go to the mountains. I love my grandchildren. I love my brother. None of those uses of the word love expresses sexual desire. It's just not in there. But when the Song of Songs uses the word love or beloved, that's what it means, and that's all it means. It means pure sexual desire. The word that is translated as love in there is a word that is found nowhere else in the Bible. And it just simply means you have sexual longing for someone. And keep in mind, this book of the Bible was written way back before anything like the modern concept of romantic love existed. So the way the Song of Songs uses the word love, it's not in any way the word is used anywhere else in the Bible. It is a word that is only used there in the Bible, and it just denotes sex. Now, when you read the Song of Songs, you'll see that the major part of it is the voices of these two young people expressing their longing for each other. There are some minor voices in there. There are friends of the young man and friends of the young woman. The brothers of the young woman are in there. There's some night watchmen in there. But all these other people play a very minor role in that book. They were served mainly to make brief comments on the young man and young woman, or they serve as characters in a situation. They play a very minor role. The major part of the book is this young girl and this young boy expressing their longing for each other. And one of the difficulties of the book is that the way it's written, it's not clear who says what. It doesn't say James said blank, then Tom said blank, then James's brother said this. It's just a bunch of dialogue all run together. And it does not indicate in there who is talking. We have to decide who's talking. And you can imagine it's not always easy. Sometimes it is. For example, this says, let me kiss him, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Now that's obviously the girl talking about the boy, but in other places it's not easy to determine who says what. Well, you know how some people, when they translate the Bible, they want to tell you what it means at the same time. So depending on what Bible version you have, sometimes the translators will decide who they think is speaking, and they'll break it up into little categories and tell you. Some will say, the man said, the girl said, or they have different names for them or something like that. And see there, but that's completely added by the translators. In the manuscripts, there is no indication whatsoever of who is speaking. And additionally, these ones that put the man says, the woman says, are muddying the waters there because they're sort of covering over and painting over the fact that these people are actually adolescents. And these things that the Bible translators and all do to try to make it more palatable actually lead to a lot of confusion. And so I don't pay any attention to stuff like that. I guess the best way to look at this is to just concentrate on what the boy and girl say to each other. Their dialogue comprises 95% of it, and what other people say is incidental. So I want to give you just an overview of some of the things that are said in here. And then from chapters 1 and 2, the girl says this, a bundle of myrrh is my darling to me. He shall lie all night between my breasts. As an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my darling among young men. I yearn to sit in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet in my throat. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his intention toward me was love. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. Oh, that his left hand were under my head, and his right hand embracing me. Now the boy speaks of the girl like this. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats moving down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them is bereaved. Your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed among the lilies. I will hasten to the mountain of love and the hill of frankincense. And he goes on to say, your lips distill nectar. Honey and milk are under your tongue. Your channel is an orchard of pomegranates with all the choicest fruits. I don't think I need to explain what channel it is. Now the girl says this in chapter 5, my beloved is all radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. His head is the finest gold, his locks are wavy, black as a raven. His eyes are like doves beside springs of water, bathed in milk, fitly set. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding fragrance. His lips are lilies, distilling liquid myrrh. His arms are rounded gold set with jewels. His body is ivory, encrusted with sapphires. His legs are alabaster columns set upon bases of gold. I had put off my garment. How could I put it on again? I bathed my feet. How could I soil them? My beloved thrust his hand into my opening, and my thighs yearned for him. I arose too open to my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh. Now, you don't have to use much imagination to see how steamy that is. And you know, this comes from the Bible, and no wonder it's ignored. Moving on, in chapter 7, the boy says, your rounded thighs are like jewels, the work of a master hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Your head crowns you, and your flowing locks are like purple. I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its branches. May your breasts be clusters of the vine, the scent of your breath like apples, your kisses like the best wine that flows smoothly over me, gliding over lips and teeth. The girl says, I am my darling's. His desire is for me. Come, let us go forth into the fields and lodge in the villages. Let us go out early to the vineyards and see whether the vines have budded, whether the grape blossoms have opened and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. Now that's a pretty good sample of what's in there. If you go home and read the Song of Songs this afternoon, you'll see that it's stuff like that all the way through it. Yet there's no real story in this. There's nothing about God in it, nothing about religion, nothing about anything we used to think of as stuff that belongs in the Bible. It's just a young boy and a young girl expressing their longing to have sex with each other. And as I said before, it doesn't talk about love in any other sense we see in the Bible. It doesn't talk about love one another. It doesn't talk about love your neighbor. It doesn't talk about how God loves us. It doesn't talk about for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. It's not love in any of those senses of the word. It's just love in the sense of pure sex. Now, some of the images in there are images of sex acts. And, really, we don't talk about this because it's just too embarrassing. It'd be too embarrassing to me to point them all out. And you can imagine it really disturbs some people that this is in the Bible. It's just embarrassing. And as you might expect, there are disagreements among biblical scholars as to what this actually is. No one knows what it really is. Some people say it's a play, and that it was like a drama that was supposed to be performed on stage where you would have actors, sort of like a soap opera, I guess. Others say that it is a love poem that was used at weddings. Still others say that it's just a collection of love poems that have been compiled and put together at some point, that it's just a bunch of stuff they just wrote in one book. And some say it's not from the Hebrew or Jewish traditions at all, that it was borrowed from some other kind of culture. Nobody knows what it is. There's a lot of different opinions about it, but nobody really knows. And nobody knows who wrote it. Some Bible versions will say it's the Song of Solomon, but there's nothing in there to identify an author. Some Bible versions say that because Solomon is used in some of the metaphors in there. And so, but that's not in any way to say that Solomon might have written it. He's just basically used in metaphors. And I guess another reason it's traditional to say that Solomon wrote it is that Solomon was known as a womanizer. And so I guess they think that, it'd be good to put it with him. So what do we do with it? Now, at various times, people have tried to use it as an allegory. As an allegory is something that stands for something else. It's using images or something to stand for something else. And those who look at it as an allegory say that the boy and the girl and their sexual desire for each other is not the point, because it's just an allegory. It stands for something. And they say that it stands for God's love toward us and our love toward God. In other words, what they're saying is that it says that God's love for us is as strong as the sexual yearning that a young boy and girl have for each other, and that our love for God should be as strong as that too. And so this view says that it shows how deep and burning our love for God should be. And it would be burning just like sexual desire among young teenagers. And so this takes the sex out of it. It's not about sex, it's about love for God and God's love for us. And because this interpretation gets rid of the sex, it's been very popular over the years among Christians and Jews alike. It enables people to get rid of the sex, which some people apparently believe is necessary for it to have a place in the Bible. My opinion is That whole idea about it being an allegory about love like that is an excuse, and I don't think it holds water. So what do we do with it? My suggestion is simply accept it for what it is. You know, we don't have to put an allegorical interpretation on it. We don't have to try to twist and turn all kinds of backward flips and stuff to spiritualize it. We can say just one little thing, that it is about the sexual longing that takes place between adolescent boys and girls. That's an uncomfortable position to take, though. You see, our society associates sex, or used to associate sex, with a lifelong commitment of marriage and a relationship and all, and having children, establishing a family, and this, that, and the other. But if you read the Song of Songs, there's nothing in there about that. It's just sex, for sex's sake. Now, many of those who want to take the sex out of this have come up with some really crafty ways of explaining it away. But in reality, I think what's there is just pure adolescent sexual desire. It's that age when puberty comes up and hormones start flowing and boys start noticing girls and girls start noticing boys, and things happen. And of all the places to find this, we find it in the Bible. I think the real clue to what we are going to do with this book, or what we should do it, comes in the middle of chapter 8, and it says this: love is strong as death, passion as fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a raging flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If one offered for love all the wealth of one's house, it would be utterly scorned. And remember, that word love there does not mean love like we think of it. It means just pure sexual desire. And so what that is telling us is that sexual desire is strong. It's like a raging fire. And it's stronger than all the other desires and wants when you're that age. I think the Song of Songs is a recognition of that. That sexual desire among adolescents and young teenagers is the strongest desire that they have at that point in time. So really, what we have in the Song of Songs is sexual desire among adolescents of all things, enthroned in the pages of the Bible in its own book. We have a whole book of the Bible that's about that. It's just stuck in there without explanation. It certainly seems like it doesn't fit. If you look at some of the other things in the Old Testament, you look, the book that comes before it is the book of Ecclesiastes. And that's the book where this guy says, life is just a waste of time. You're not going to get anything out of it. There's no meaning to it, no purpose to it. Nothing works right. There's no use trying. That's the book of Ecclesiastes. The book of Isaiah is a book of prophecy. It's a book of judgment. It's a book of people not doing what they're supposed to do and being punished for it. And then right in the middle of those two, you have this book just set in there. And it just doesn't seem to fit. Why should we be surprised that this is in the Bible, though, when you think about it? After all, sexual desire is part of life. It's normal. It's natural. It's part of the way we are. It's evidently part of the way God chose us to be. After reading the Song of Songs, we'd have to conclude that sex is more than just a way to procreate the next generation. In this book of the Bible that's devoted to sexual desire, it's not pictured as leading to a committed relationship. It's not pictured as leading to raising children. It's not pictured as leading to establishing a family. It's not pictured as leading to procreating the next generation at all. It's just presented as an end in itself. Now, what we're seeing here is something that I think the Old Testament does so well. The Old Testament grapples with the real hard stuff of life. It shows us the hard questions, the hard issues. It grapples with the real stuff people face in their life. You see that all over the Old Testament. You see it grappling with the question, why do things happen the way they do? You see Job grappling with the question, why have these horrible things happened to me? You see them grappling with the question, how is God like? How does God act? How does God determine how he acts toward us? You see them searching and digging and wondering. And the Old Testament does not shy away from all that. It doesn't shy away from the hard questions of life, from the real stuff of life. And I think this is another example of that. Adolescent boys and adolescent girls are attracted to each other, and they have tremendous sexual desire for each other. That's just the way it is. And really, we shouldn't let it embarrass us, and we shouldn't make excuses for why it's in the Bible. And we don't need to try to turn it into something it's not. But neither should we ignore it. That strong sexual attraction between adolescent boys and girls is a part of the way things are. A while back when we talked about abortion, we talked about that one of the problems today in our society is the fact that the way our society and the educational system and everything is structured, that we are postponing marriage and relationships on into the 20s. Like this is your mid-20s by the time you get through college. And of course, by the time you get married, you need to be through college, established in a career, and have a little money saved up and this, that, and the other. So maybe when you're 25 or 30, it's time to get married. But we looked at that and we said, that people mature sexually by 14 or 15. And we are asking people to live in abstinence for 10 years during which their sexual desire is the strongest. So maybe one of the reasons this is in the Bible is that it's trying to remind us that adolescents are like this and they have these desires. And they are so strong, as it said, that no water can quench it. Nothing can quench it. Maybe we need to heed what the Bible is telling us in regard to that.